All right, welcome to the second of our documents for our modified DBQ, and this one is by Confucius, and it's from a larger piece called The Analects. They were written down by his students. Okay, and just like with Lao Tzu, where what I did was put together an original version here on the left, and a no fear version on the right that's simplified with easier language and where the paragraphs all match up. I'm going to go ahead and walk through this. So I'll read from the original, I'll explain as I go. But I just wanted you to see that, make sure you realize that that setup is the same, so that if you have questions, you can go back to the text and understand. And that no fear version, again, is me simplifying the language a bit, trying to make it clearer and easier for you to understand. All right, so the Analects, by the way, are written, they're a series of sayings by Confucius. So when you read them, they always start, or almost all of them start, by saying the master says. Okay. Oftentimes, I know when I was a kid, we used to make jokes and not realizing at the time that it was based on an actual historical source, and we would say things like Confucius say, and then make up something silly, right? Not at all related to what Confucius actually had to say. But that's why you're going to see some structure in this that's going to be very similar. And for the most part, it's going to be the master said. So often you'll see somebody else asking something and the master responding, or things like that. Okay. Because Confucius was a wandering advisor, for lack of a better term, during a period called the Warring States period. So he moved around a pretty fair amount and never really got to see his theories on government put into play during his lifetime. But they became and remain to this day highly influential. We're talking about Chinese culture and Chinese government in particular, right? So 1.5, and now I'm on the text. The master said, "In governing 1,000-chariot state, be reverent to your duties and truthful. Economize expenditure of men. Employ the people at proper times." Okay, so in governing a small state, small country, okay, be respectful of your duties and be truthful. In other words, know what you need to do, how you need to do it, okay? And be respectful of the fact that it needs to get done and that it's not just about you, but also be truthful, be honest about doing it, okay? Economize expenditure of love men. So don't spend too much on the people, but at the same time, right, you want to employ the people at proper times. So you want to use people when you need them. Okay, so don't spend too much money on people, but make sure that you're willing to use them as you need to. 2.1, the master said, "He who conducts government with virtue may be likened to the North Star, which seated in its place is surrounded by multitudes of other stars." Okay, so the North Star, if you're not familiar with the skies or navigation, and I wouldn't blame you at your age, right? But the North Star is one that's commonly used for navigation because it doesn't move very much in the skies. Okay, so it's a common reference point when we're talking about navigation, right? Which is kind of what he's doing here. So he who conducts government with virtue may be likened to the North Star. Okay, so he may be likened to a beacon, right? To somebody to look up to. So if you're virtuous, if you're doing your job well, if you're kind, if you're courteous, if you're a good person, okay, when you're conducting government, then you're going to be somebody to be looked up to, okay? And because you're going to be somebody to be looked up to, you're going to kind of be the center of things, okay? So he says the North Star, which seated in its place, so it doesn't move a whole lot, right, is surrounded by multitudes of other stars. but the stars around the North Star do move around. Okay? So if you do a good job being the ruler, then people are going to flock to you and surround you, and they too will start to be virtuous, right? Or will be more virtuous. 2.3. The master said, if you govern them with decrees and regulate them with punishments, the people will evade them but have no sense of shame. If you govern them with virtue and regulate them with rituals, they will have a sense of shame and flock to you. Okay? So if you govern them is the people in this case, right? With decrees and regulate them with punishments. So there's lots of laws and rules and really stiff punishments for breaking them. Then the people will evade them, the laws and rules, but have no sense of shame. So they're not going to feel bad about doing it. Okay? And if you think about it, think about your own life, right? And when you've been in situations with adults who you feel are way over the top in terms of the laws and the rules, you don't feel so bad about breaking those sometimes, right? Even if you are a good person, you don't feel so bad about breaking rules that you feel like are dumb. Okay. If you govern them, if you govern the people with virtue and regulate them with rituals, okay, so again, virtue is being a good person. If you're virtuous, you're a good person, right? So if you're governing them well, and if you have rituals to help them make sense of the world, okay, so rituals are things that you do repetitively, I think is probably the easiest way to explain that. But they're things that you do that have significance to you, okay? So, a ritual for me that just kind of helps me get started on my day, for example, every single morning, I get up, I get dressed, I make my bed. I do that before I have my tea in the morning, right? Before I eat in the morning, before I go to work in the morning, anything else, that's my ritual, okay? So I use that to regulate my morning. And because of that, because that's kind of more self-imposed, right? So it's not a punishment, but it's something that I'm choosing. Then I feel a little bit weird. I feel a bit of a sense of shame if I'm not making my bed, right? So if you're governing people well, if you're helping them to make sense of their world and giving them ways to act that will help them make sense of the world, right? They will have that sense of shame if they're violating those rituals or those rules, right? And they'll come to you. 219. Duke I asked, "What must we do to make the people obedient?" Master Kong, it's another way of saying Confucius, okay? Because Confucius is a westernized version of his name. Master Kong replied, "Promote the upright, place them above the crooked, and the people shall be obedient. Promote the crooked, place them above the upright, and the people shall be disobedient." Okay? So if you want to make people do what you want to do, you have to highlight and encourage the folks who are doing what needs doing. Okay? Promote the upright. Promote in a literal sense of bring them up in society, right? Maybe you're giving them a title or something like that. But also promote in the sense of draw attention to, okay? And do that in a way that places them above the people who are not doing what you need them to do, or they're not acting properly, right? Those are the crooked people, right? So if you're drawing attention to the good people and encouraging them, then people will be good. They'll do what needs doing. Promote the crooked, place them above the upright, and the people shall be disobedient. So if you do the opposite, all right, let's just say you want people to obey a bunch of laws and rules, but you hire as your chief enforcer of that somebody who doesn't obey those same laws and rules. then people will disobey. They'll understand that those things don't matter. All right, 220. Ji Kongji asked, how do you make people reverent, loyal, and mutually encouraging? The master said, if you preside over them with dignity, they will be reverent. If you are filial and loving, they will be loyal. If you promote the good and instruct the incapable, they will be mutually encouraging. All right, so just like Duke Ai, Ji Kong Ji must be a ruler of some sort. All right, how do you make the people reverent, loyal, and mutually encouraging? Reverent means respectful. Okay, loyal you probably have some idea for. Mutually encouraging, right, to help each other out. The master says, if you preside, if you rule over them with dignity, they will be reverent. So if you show respect for yourself, right, that's really what dignity is it's respect for yourself and respect for what's for your situation, right? They will be reverent, they will be respectful. If you are filial and loving, right? Filial means like family oriented. They will be loyal. So if you treat people like they're members of your family, if you treat them well, that's where the loving part comes in, because I know not all families treat each other well, right? But if you are loyal to them in the way families are loyal to each other, you love them, then they will be loyal to you, he says. Okay? If you promote the good and instruct the incapable, so you want to encourage people who do what you need to do, and you help the people who are not doing what you need them to do for whatever reason, right? Maybe they don't know how to do it. Maybe they've never been asked to do it. Maybe they're simply choosing not to do it, right? But you're instructing them. You're helping them to sort it out, right? Then they will be mutually encouraging. So if they see you doing those things, in essence, then they will do those things themselves, right? They will help each other out if you help them. All right, so if you have questions about the document, I'd encourage you to go through, read that no fear version, see if you can get it sorted. If you can't, reach out and let me know. And otherwise, I will see you in class.